Deep within the dense jungles of Vietnam, the air felt heavy and still. The humidity clung to everything: uniforms, equipment, even breath itself. Movement was slow and cautious because every step forward could lead into something unseen. The thick vegetation limited visibility to just a few meters, turning the jungle into a place where danger rarely revealed itself before it struck. A small patrol unit was making its way along a narrow trail. The soldiers moved in formation, alert but steady. For a brief moment, everything seemed calm. The only sounds were the subtle rustling of leaves and the distant presence of life hidden within the jungle. Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted. From somewhere ahead, hidden among the trees, an ambush began. The sudden burst of gunfire broke the silence instantly. It was fast, aggressive, and close enough to force immediate reaction. The soldiers instinctively dropped into cover, using trees, uneven ground, and any available protection to shield themselves from the incoming fire. The weapon responsible for this attack was the AK-47, one of the most widely used rifles of the Vietnam War. Designed by Mikhail Kalashnikov, the AK-47 was built with one primary goal in mind: reliability under the harshest conditions. In environments like Vietnam's jungle, where mud, moisture, and debris were constant challenges, this reliability made a significant difference. The attackers relied on speed and surprise. The AK-47's ability to deliver rapid automatic fire allowed small groups to create immediate pressure, forcing opposing forces into defensive positions. In jungle warfare, where engagements often occurred at close range, this advantage was critical. As the patrol unit reacted, communication became difficult. The intensity of the situation made verbal coordination nearly impossible. Soldiers depended on training, hand signals, and instinct to respond effectively. Each individual had to make quick decisions, whether to hold position, reposition, or return fire. The jungle itself added to the complexity. Visibility was limited, and the dense foliage distorted both sight and sound. Gunfire seemed to come from multiple directions due to echoes and natural barriers. Identifying the exact location of the attackers was not straightforward, which increased the uncertainty of the encounter. These kinds of engagements were not uncommon in Vietnam. Guerrilla tactics were frequently used, involving small, mobile units that would strike quickly and then withdraw before a coordinated response could be organized. The AK-47 fit perfectly into this style of warfare due to its durability, ease of use, and effectiveness in close-range combat. After a short but intense exchange, the ambush ended as quickly as it had begun. The attackers disappeared back into the jungle, leaving behind a tense silence once again. For the soldiers, the experience served as a reminder of how unpredictable jungle warfare could be. In Vietnam, danger rarely announced itself in advance. Encounters like this could happen at any time, in any direction. The environment, combined with the tactics used and the reliability of weapons like the AK-47, created a battlefield where awareness and reaction were just as important as firepower. Each patrol carried the same underlying reality. Every step deeper into the jungle could bring them face to face with an unseen enemy. And in that uncertainty, survival depended on staying alert, adapting quickly, and understanding that control of the battlefield could shift in an instant. Continuing the story in the same cinematic style. As the patrol regrouped and moved away from the immediate point of contact, the weight of the encounter remained with them. Even after the gunfire had stopped, the jungle did not return to peace right away. Every sound still felt meaningful. Every movement still carried suspicion. In environments like this, silence was never just silence. It was the space between possible threats. The soldiers continued their advance, now even more cautious than before. Encounters like the one they had just experienced were not rare in Vietnam. In fact, they were part of a larger pattern of warfare that defined the conflict. The enemy did not always engage in open battles. Instead, they relied on mobility, concealment, and timing. The AK-47 played a central role in this strategy. Its design, created by Mikhail Kalashnikov, allowed it to function reliably in conditions where other weapons might fail. This reliability meant that fighters could depend on it during sudden engagements, where hesitation or malfunction could mean losing the advantage. For the soldiers on patrol, The challenge was not only physical, but also mental. Every movement required awareness. Every pause required evaluation. The jungle did not offer clear lines of sight, which meant threats could exist at very close distances without being detected in time. As they advanced, the team maintained spacing between members. This was a precaution against ambush tactics, which often targeted groups moving too closely together. Spacing allowed for better reaction time and reduced the risk of multiple casualties from a single burst of fire. The terrain itself continued to influence their movement. Roots, uneven ground, and dense vegetation slowed progress. At times, visibility dropped to just a few steps ahead. In such conditions, even minor sounds, like a branch snapping or leaves shifting, could trigger immediate alertness. Back in the broader context of the war, encounters like these were part of a larger operational reality. Patrols, reconnaissance missions, and supply movements all carried risk. The unpredictability of engagements meant that soldiers had to remain prepared at all times, regardless of whether they were actively in combat or not. The AK-47, with its widespread use, became a familiar presence across these encounters. Its role was not limited to one side alone. It appeared frequently in different hands throughout the conflict. What made it particularly notable was how well it adapted to the environment and the style of warfare being used. As the patrol continued deeper into the jungle, the memory of the earlier ambush remained a silent reminder. It influenced their decisions, their pacing, and their awareness. Experience in such environments often came not from training alone, but from direct encounters that left lasting impressions. In Vietnam, survival was not defined by a single moment, but by a continuous chain of decisions. Each step, each reaction, and each observation contributed to a larger outcome. Weapons like the AK-47 shaped these moments, not just through their physical impact, but through the way they influenced behavior, strategy, and perception. And so, as the jungle stretched endlessly ahead, the patrol moved forward, knowing that at any point, the calm could break again, and another encounter could begin without warning. Continuing the narrative in the same cinematic story style. As the patrol pushed further into the jungle, the environment began to feel even more isolated. The density of the vegetation increased, narrowing the path and limiting movement. The light from above barely reached the ground, filtered through layers of leaves and branches. In some areas, shadows blended together so completely that distinguishing shapes became difficult. The soldiers moved carefully, maintaining discipline and spacing. Each member of the patrol understood that in this terrain, small mistakes could escalate quickly. The earlier ambush had reinforced a simple but critical lesson. Danger in the jungle rarely announced itself in advance. There were moments of complete stillness, where the only sounds were their own footsteps and breathing. Yet even in those moments, alertness never faded. Experience had taught them that silence often carried its own kind of tension. It was during these quiet intervals that ambushes were most likely to occur. The AK-47 remained a constant factor in their awareness. Its presence was not just physical, but psychological. Knowing that such a weapon could be used effectively in close quarters meant that any sudden movement ahead could potentially escalate into another engagement. Designed by Mikhail Kalashnikov, the AK-47 had become widely used across various forces during the Vietnam War. Its simplicity and durability allowed it to function consistently in environments where maintenance was difficult and conditions were harsh. This made it especially suitable for jungle warfare, where reliability could directly influence survival. As the patrol advanced, they encountered signs that suggested recent activity, disturbed foliage, subtle changes in the terrain, and traces that indicated movement through the area. These observations were small, but in a setting like this, they carried significance. Experienced soldiers learned to interpret such details as part of their situational awareness. The group paused briefly to assess their surroundings. Decisions at this stage were critical. Moving forward without proper evaluation could lead them into another potential ambush zone. The jungle offered many natural positions where attackers could remain concealed while observing movement from a distance. Communication within the patrol remained minimal but effective. Signals were used to indicate movement, pauses, and changes in direction. In environments where noise discipline was essential, nonverbal coordination became a key part of operational success. Gradually, the patrol resumed movement, adjusting their path slightly to avoid areas that appeared more exposed. The terrain dictated their route as much as their objectives did. Every choice was made with caution, balancing progress with safety. In the broader context of the conflict, such patrols were a routine but essential part of operations. They helped gather information, maintain presence, and respond to potential threats. However, each mission carried inherent risks due to the nature of the terrain and the tactics employed by opposing forces. The earlier encounter with the ambush had not been an isolated event. It was representative of a pattern seen throughout the war. Small, fast-moving engagements, often initiated without warning, were a defining characteristic of jungle warfare. Weapons like the AK-47 supported these tactics by enabling quick, effective bursts of fire in close-range situations. As time passed and the patrol continued their movement, the jungle gradually returned to its quiet rhythm. Yet the experience of the ambush remained present in their mindset, shaping how they moved and how they observed their surroundings. In Vietnam, every patrol carried uncertainty. No path was completely safe, and no moment could be assumed to be free of danger. The environment itself, combined with the nature of the conflict, ensured that awareness was not optional, it was essential. And so, the patrol moved forward, step by step, deeper into the unknown, where every sound, every shadow, and every detail could mean the difference between a routine movement and another sudden encounter.